everybody, welcome to Crafting and Crime Daily. It's the end of November and I wanted to show you before we get to the true crime, and there is a new trial. So I'm covering a new trial today. Of course, you already knew that because you saw the thumbnail, but I wanted to show you the painting that I finished. I worked on this all through November and I finished it yesterday. Look, this is from Yumi Arts. Oh, isn't it gorgeous? Now, there's also like a flute player and a drummer and a pianist, but and I used to play the flute. I don't know why I didn't do the flute one, but this one's stunning. I really like how it turned out. So, what am I working on now? Well, yesterday I kitted up during my live. I kitted up the painting that I'm going to be doing in January. The Crazy Cat Lady. And it's huge. Oh my gosh. Oh, I can show it to you. Yes, we'll get to the crime. Trust me. This is the one I'm going to do starting in January. I said it's huge. I wasn't kidding. And there's like 20 cats in this thing. Yep. Now, I know I got to roll it back up. Oh gosh, I'm going to be rolling for forever here. All right. So that's kitted up. I'm also going to start the Firebird Panorama, which is a huge one that I'm going to be working on all year. I have not kitted that one up yet. But for the month of December, I'll be finishing up a gnome painting that I started last year. I'm not going to get that out now because we need to get to the heart of the matter, the new trial. And I picked a really good one, guys. This is probably very controversial. And for that, I'm not sorry because, I like to hear differences of opinion. Why not? So right now I'm working on the turkey gnome. Let me see if I can show you. It's attached to a bunch of bobbins at this point, but it's here, the turkey gnome. I'll show it to you when I'm finished. Yeah, I've got like 15 bobbins attached to it. So this is this new trial. This is about the death of a young man, 23 years old at the time that this incident occurred. And this is going over to Aurora, Colorado, one state over. A warm summer night. It's August 24th of 2019. So this is right before COVID, about 5-6 months before COVID, cranked up. And this young man, Elijah McLean, he's gone out for a little stroll. He works as a massage therapist. He left his house that evening to go to take a short walk up to a convenience store where he purchases a couple of iced teas. Now they have him on surveillance video, so you can see him making those purchases, and he's wearing a, a dark. Now I'm just describing to you what they said during their opening statements, the lawyers, because unfortunately the camera angles in this thing are not great. It's a court cam, and which is exactly what you're going to get in the Daybell trial. The judge ruled yesterday that cameras will be in the Chad Daybell trial. They will be allowed, but they're court cameras and they suck. So you don't see, for this particular trial, you couldn't see anything that was displayed to the jury. None of the body cam footage, nothing. So he's wearing a dark jacket and a black ski mask, and in August. So somebody calls 911 and they're like, this is very suspicious. There's this black male walking down the street in on this summer night where it's in the 70s, and he's got a jacket on and a ski mask, and he's waving his arms around. Now, in fact, what he was doing was listening to his iPods. You know, he's got the things in his ears, and he's probably dancing. Got his iced tea. He's on his way home from the convenience store when three police officers approach him. And like I said, I didn't see the body cam footage, but a struggle ensues. He's not cooperating with these officers. He's like, leave me alone. He tells them, I am an introvert. Please keep your distance. And, this whole thing is just so sad. So he's walking home. The three officers approach him, and this struggle ensues because like I said, he's not cooperating. Why don't they just cooperate? If you're doing something and an officer tells you to stop doing it, please. And because what's going to ensue with this young man was tragic, to say the least. So, meanwhile, they ask in this struggle, they get him to the ground, and they're doing all these restraint maneuvers, pressure points behind the ear to control him, leaning on his elbows, handcuff him. And even with these three officers, like trying to restrain him, he's trying to get up. So he's not cooperating. So they call for a medical check. So they get on the radio, they want a medical check. So the dispatch calls the fire department to come out with the EMTs. Also, an ambulance at the same time is dispatched. Now, the job of the firefighters is to come. There are firefighter EMTs, and four of them come, but two of them are EMTs, and the other two are like the drivers of they come on a fire truck. So they get there, and they can see that this guy is restrained on the ground. He's struggling to get up, and the first thing that one of the police or the firefighters says does he speak English? And they're like, yeah. But the reason he asked that is because this is right in front of this location where they have this low income housing for immigrants, and there's a lot of nationalities that come out of this housing area. And so, I mean, it was a legitimate question because he wasn't making sense. And so, I mean, his first thought is, well, is that English? And so he's still struggling. And while these EMTs are standing there trying to figure out what's going on, the officers pick this guy up and slam him back to the ground. And at one point, apparently one of the firefighters reaches down and checks for carotid pulse. And so the issue in this trial is going to be who was controlling this scene? Was it the police? Was it the firefighters? Like there was like no real handoff. So the firefighters felt like they couldn't really intervene because the police are still struggling with him, and so they're getting on their radio and they're like, ambulance, where are you? Because all of their tools are in this ambulance, and they think what they're seeing is a, a diagnosis called excited delirium. It's where you have this superhuman strength, and you're you're sweating and your pulse is racing and you're not making any sense. So they're thinking, well, this is what we're seeing here. So they want to follow their protocol and get him on a gurney or get him some ketamine. So they're trying to get to the patient, but the officers are like telling that, they're like, can you unhandcuff him? And they're like, no, we'll do that when we get him on the gurney. Well, the gurney is in the ambulance and they're not there yet. So the firefighters, they get on the phone and they're like, "Are you coming emergently? Are you bringing the gurney and the ketamine? We need this." So the ambulance finally gets there. They administer 500 milligrams of ketamine. Now, apparently, this guy only weighed 140 pounds. The ketamine dosage that they gave him would have covered very sufficiently a person weighing over 200 pounds. The dose that a 140 milligram, a 140-pound man should get would be roughly 350, 360 milligrams. So he got way more than he should have got. And I listened during both of the firefighter, because there's two firefighters on trial here. This is the trial of the two firefighter EMTs, and they've been charged with reckless. Let me find it here. What they're charged with. I wrote it down. Reckless manslaughter, reckless assault with a deadly weapon, which is the ketamine, and chemical restraint, also the ketamine, assault with bodily injury. And it's an officer named Officer Chuniak. He was a lieutenant at the time, and Firefighter Cooper. So the ambulance, finally gets there. Chuniak, they've got the ketamine. He draws up 500 milligrams. He gives it to Cooper. Cooper administers it, and now they're going to wait for it to take effect, because the officers have already said they're not taking this guy out of handcuffs until he gets on the gurney. Well, they're waiting for the ambulance guy to bring the gurney up, because when these when they get to this scene after they're initially called, here's what they knew: that this guy was acting strangely, and that that's was the entire call, that concerned citizen called and said he was acting strangely. And so they get there, and there's this heavy police presence, police cars everywhere. So now they're thinking, what in the world is going on here? So everything's very concerning to them. So, as the defense pointed out, their job is to respond to the scene, assess the situation, stabilize the patient, and then transport them. That's it. The ambulance has the paramedics on it, who can do more. But in anyway, they get this guy finally on the stretcher. After they leave him on the ground, administer the ketamine. They wait for him to calm down, and about a minute, around a minute, he starts to calm down. Very quickly, the ambulance finally gets there. Well, they're there, but they're bringing up the gurney through all these police cars and stuff. So they get him on the gurney. Immediately, they lift the gurney up. He's still in handcuffs. They're telling the police officers take the handcuffs off. They're not doing it. And they're doing it finally. They do take the handcuffs off, and they put him in soft restraints, because if he happens to wake up from that ketamine, the likelihood is he's going to be combative again. So they get him into soft restraints, and at this point they notice, and they're asking for suction, because he had vomited, and he still had his ski mask on. They never took the daggum ski mask off of him. So he ends up aspirating, like breathing that vomit, and it goes into his lungs. So they're asking for suction, and they realize he's not breathing. Doesn't have a pulse. So they immediately start CPR. They get him in the ambulance, take him to the hospital. And what happens is he ends up on life support. And a couple of weeks after that, the young man passes away. Now, initially, there's an autopsy. And the autopsy initially, the conclusion was the cause of death was undetermined. But there's this loud hue and cry, because nobody's in trouble. We Black Lives Matter is a movement that starts to happen, and the people are out in full force saying somebody needs to pay for this this young man's death. And prosecutors look at the case and they're like, they don't want to prosecute anybody. But the hue and cry gets louder and louder in publicity, and they finally get the medical examiner to take another look at the autopsy. And he comes out and he says that, let me read it to you. So initially in September of 2014, the autopsy was said undetermined, that this was as a result of intense physical exertion. He had a small, narrow anterior descending artery. That's the artery that goes to your heart. But then when he looks at it again, he says, but for the ketamine administration, this kid probably would have not, the young man would not have died. So now they press charges against 3 of the police officers and these 2 firefighters. Now, so we're getting 3 separate trials. So one of the police officers is tried by himself, and then the other 2 are tried. So the first police officer is tried, and he is acquitted. And that gentleman's name was, I will find it, sorry, Nathan Woodard. He pled not guilty, and he was acquitted. Then they have Jason Rosenblatt and Randy Rodema. They are tried for criminal negligent homicide. Now, I don't know who did what as far as what the officer's, role was in each different officer was, because we didn't cover those trials. But Jason Rosenblatt was found not guilty of the criminal negligent homicide, and Randy Rodema was convicted of criminally negligent homicide. Now, none of these 5 people were charged with anything intentional. None of this was intentional. It was just reckless. That means that they're just disregarding their training, their protocols, they're just acting recklessly. So this guy's convicted, and according to my sources, I don't know that he's been sentenced, but he could serve up to 3 years for that. Now, one of the officers, Nathan Woodard, the first guy to get tried, he actually was reinstated to the Aurora Police Department, and with $200,000 in back pay. Yeah. So that's where we're at with that. So here's what the prosecution is saying about these 2. And there's a lot of finger pointing here. The police, during their trial, said, oh no, it wasn't us. It was these fire medics, they're calling them. It was the fire medics' problem. They gave them the ketamine. Well, it wasn't us. And the firefighters are now going, we didn't have control of this scene. The police officers were controlling the scene. We couldn't get to our patient. So a lot of this going on there. Yeah. So the prosecution is saying that they overdosed him with ketamine. There was no assessment. That never once did they even speak to this man. They spoke to other people to ascertain what was going on. They violated their training and their protocols. They gave him the maximum dose that you can give, without regard to what his possible weight might have been. And then they left him there unconscious until he was unable to breathe. Um, so he was he was handcuffed. He was unconscious. He vomited. He aspirated. He suffered from what they call acidosis. It's where the acid builds up in your bloodstream and it can cause brain damage. And it did. Because after a couple of weeks that he was on life support, they determined that he was brain dead. And that's when they turned off the life support and he passed away. You could hear on the body cam during this struggle He's saying, please, I'm trying, please help me. Um, but these fire medics never touched him. And I will add that, the police are, after they picked him up and slammed him back to the, did I tell you that? Yeah. After these guys get there and he's on the ground and he's restrained, after they get there and they're trying to figure out what's going on, the police, he's still struggling. The police pick him up and slam him back to the ground. And they're like, we're going to leave him here until, you can get the chemical, they don't say chemical restraint, until you sedation. And they absolutely say, I think we're dealing with excited delirium here. And that's going to be something the jury's going to have to figure out. Was this excited delirium or was it not? So the prosecution is saying they never spoke a word to this man. They didn't take out any of their equipment. Now, you'll hear that the defense lawyers, because there's two, there's one for each paramedic or fire medic, and they're saying that the ambulance had the equipment. They needed a gurney, they needed soft restraints, they needed ketamine. All that stuff was on the ambulance. And this ambulance company is privatized. Aurora doesn't have their own ambulances. They have to rely on private ambulances. The ambulance was dispatched at the same time. I know we're finger pointing again. And got there long, like 5-10 minutes after the fire medics got there, because they were responding to a car on the other side of town when they got dispatched to this call. So they came as quickly as they could. Anyway, I know. Now we're pointing fingers at the private ambulance company and the city of Aurora, Colorado for not having their own ambulances. And we're pointing at the police, and the police are pointing at the fire medics. And mom, the mother of this poor Elijah, is pointing at everybody. You. You all killed my son. Who had, I don't know. Why was he out there with a ski mask? Why didn't he just listen to the officer? I mean, we saw that in another case recently where the black man, he's approached by a white officer and he's not cooperating. All he had to do was just sit down and listen to the officer, and he wouldn't do it, and he struggled, and he ends up shooting the officer in the head. I know. And according to the officers, they said that Elijah had tried to take their gun during this struggle. So I don't know if we're going to hear from any of these officers, but like I said, there's a lot of body cam footage. So the defense is asking the jury to please listen to the details. Listen to not just what's going on in the foreground of these videos that you're going to watch over and over and over again, but listen to what's going on behind the scenes. Like, look to see who's talking to who behind the scenes, because that's not always picked up on the microphone. You've got this fire medic who's got a radio. He's trying to listen to his radio to see where the ambulance is. He's trying to assess the situation. He's being told by the police officers that it took 3 of them to get him down, and then they couldn't hold him down, and that he tried to take their gun, and they're thinking, oh my gosh, we've got to calm this situation down. And I think this very well could be a situation where um, and this is just my opinion and conjecture, that it's either going to be a not guilty verdict on the part of this jury, or it's going to be some kind of compromise, lesser included offense, like assault, or, I don't know. We'll see. Because everything that the defense in their opening said made total sense to me. And I thought, okay, but what's never talked about in their openings is why they gave so much ketamine. Why? I understand why you thought you needed ketamine, but why did you think you needed 500 milligrams? I don't know. All right, so this is going to play out. I'm going to keep it covered for you guys. Today will be day 2 of what's expected to be a trial that's going to last a couple weeks, because you've got the state attorney and their team, and then you've got 2 other teams, a defense team for each person that's charged, each fire medic that's charged, and one of them is a lieutenant, decorated, highly respected fire medics that work actually at the busiest firehouse in the city of Aurora, Colorado. And Aurora, Colorado is huge. It's a huge city in Colorado. Wonderful place to live, from what I understand. Right, Sherry? Sherry lived there, but I think she moved. She's one of my members. Anyway, so that's what I have for you today. I'm going back to work on my gnome, my turkey gnome. I hope to have this done today, the end of November. Then I'm going to start. Want to see the next one I'm going to start? I'm so excited. I'll show you what this one's going to look like when I'm done. It's super cute. Hold on. Oh, and I have a plan. I am going to be purchasing an e-trike, an electric tricycle, so I can get where I needed to go. I'm not going to buy a car. I'm just not going to do it. Too expensive. Insurance is too expensive. I don't need the extra, it's a lot of money out the door. I can Lyft or Uber anywhere I want to go, and I'll have a tricycle that's electric, and then my sister can ride it too. So here's the turkey gnome that I'm working on, the boy gnome. Yeah. And then after that, I'm going to start the snowman gnome. Let me find it here. Where are you, snowman? I know he's here. I'm about done with these gnomes. I'm getting a little burned out on gnomes here. I never thought I'd say that. But this snowman, oh my gosh. I have to do it, right? I think I'm going to do the girl one for the snowman. Yeah. And then I will wrap all this up by doing a birthday gnome, because my birthday is December 29th. I'm not going to tell you how old I am. 29. Again, and again. Several times over. Anyway, thanks guys for watching today. Don't forget, you can make a one-time donation to the channel by hitting that super thanks button, or you can become a member or Patreon. I do monthly giveaways for everybody. And I will see you in tomorrow's video. Have a great day. Bye.